Thank you very, very much. It's a real pleasure to be here. This is a new opportunity for UNHCR, for me personally, to speak to a group of activists and defenders of human rights, labor rights. So I'm really very honored to be here. I'll say a little bit more about other reasons why I'm happy, but let me just first mention that the Office of UNHCR was born from the ashes of genocide and displacement in Europe 70 years ago to be the predominant international agency mandated to protect and assist refugees and to find solutions. The Convention on the Status of Refugees codified international standards and gave UNHCR the authority to supervise state implementation. So in our work around the world, we have now about 10,000 staff members in 125 countries and some 400 duty stations, because we situate ourselves where the refugees are, very often in the border areas. Not only do we work with NGO partners, non-governmental organizations, but with the states, and to the extent that states are not living up to their responsibilities and obligations according to the convention, our job is to let them know about it and to try to improve the situation. The Holocaust experience is at the core of UNHCR's work, therefore, to protect and assist victims of persecution because of race, religion, political opinion, and the people forcibly displaced because of discrimination, violence, war, and yes, even after the Holocaust, we have evidence of war crimes and other genocidal acts. Over the decades, UNHCR has been on the front lines working with states and civil society to ensure an adequate, immediate response to the needs of refugees and also to find solutions to their plight. It's therefore a distinct honor for UNHCR to be invited to this event convened by the Albert Shanker Institute and the Jewish Labor Committee, two organizations committed to improving access to justice and respect for human rights. And it's moreover a personal privilege for me, given my own experience as the child of survivors of the Holocaust, and my father a proud socialist at the time. A number of developments over the last 6 months have made the global refugee crisis a matter of public interest. Aylan Kurdi, the boy that was washed up on the shores of Turkey, the Paris and San Bernardino attacks, the electoral rhetoric that you referred to, and the mass flow of refugees and migrants in Europe. The unprecedented scope and magnitude of forced displacement has been called a global refugee crisis. And this is a call to find political solutions. First of all, of course, to end war and to meet the needs of the victims of conflict, discrimination, and persecution. It's also a call to engage global responsibility, states and other stakeholders, individuals, civil society, and the private sector. When we talk about millions of refugees and a global crisis, these are big ideas. But the first thing to remember is that we are talking about parents and their children, and all of them, as refugees, are first and foremost victims. Public opinion's been polarized recently, both here and in Europe, with fear underpinning a disturbing anti-refugee populist sentiment that politicians in several countries have massaged and manipulated. Reasonable concerns about national security and the changing environment have had an impact on refugee policies and procedures, and they did already in previous decades. But the stirring of xenophobic fear about national identity has led some to portray the refugee as a threat when surely they are the victims. Empathy and a sense of responsibility motivating communities around the world to continue to help refugees. And they continue to benefit from generous policies of asylum coupled with access to services and opportunities for self-sufficiency. Refugee resettlement in the United States and elsewhere still brings out the best in local communities who work in partnership with professional agencies and government to receive refugees and to help them take care of their families and contribute to their community. The numbers of people who are forcibly displaced is larger than ever since World War II, and it's growing. At this time last year, there were 20 million refugees, 40 million internally displaced people, and 10 million stateless persons. No doubt these numbers will increase when we take stock of the situation on the occasion of World Refugee Day this coming 20th June. The resources required to address humanitarian needs are also growing to unprecedented levels, and even though contributions from governments and the private sector are higher, there is still an important gap. The 2016 appeal for Syrian refugees is just about 1/4 funded, and the emergency appeals for African refugee situations are getting even less money. The key to a durable solution of the causes of displacement is essentially political. The 3 largest refugee-producing countries are Syria, Afghanistan, and Somalia. A peace process is getting underway in Syria, but violence is still intense and widespread. Achieving durable solutions in these and other countries also requires a sustained commitment to economic development and also to governance and security. Unfortunately, the trend over recent years is that the number of refugees who repatriate voluntarily to their home country is reducing as old conflicts such as Somalia, Afghanistan, and Iraq persist and others reignite, like South Sudan and Burundi, and then new conflicts emerge, such as Yemen and Libya, taking on the characteristics of protracted emergencies. It's also important to recognize that reactive protectionist policies that aim to stem the tide of refugees are either failing to reduce the numbers of refugees on the move or are undermining fundamental rights-based principles, or both. We don't need to look far for the case in point. Deterrence measures may temporarily reduce the number of arrivals, but this is at the expense of ensuring that asylum seekers have access to territory and to due process in considering their claims. Smugglers are reaping the advantage as refugees are denied safe and legal avenues to safe environments. In respect of all of the victims of persecution who came before, and for the generations to come, it's essential that public policies be grounded in the respect for human rights and refugee law. To the extent that many of the main countries of asylum are developing or middle-income countries which are coping with the economic and social impact of large numbers, the practices of the global West, of the United States, Australia, Europe, among others, can be beacons of best practice in respect of international law, or otherwise set precedents for countries to sidestep their own obligations. Innovative policies and tools are bubbling in a variety of fora as the UN and governments seek new partnerships with the private sector and civil society, and as experts seek new ways to adapt technology to help refugees. This has taken on a remarkable impetus in the field of remote education, for example, as well as in terms of energy use, logistics, and registration. These technological innovations can provide concrete protection benefits for refugees and for countries of asylum. The resurgent commitment to address the longer-term needs of refugees and the host communities is also very significant. If pursued, the development dividends will be game changers in terms of mobilizing new resources, multi-year strategies, and protecting asylum space for refugees. There's also a positive focus on efficiency and accountability. This is key to making the best use of the resources available and to encouraging governments and private donors to give more, and preferably multi-year and unearmarked financial support. They need to be able to explain to stakeholders, whether they be parliamentarians and taxpayers or shareholders and board members, that the resources are being used properly and are having the intended positive and discernible impact. 2016 is shaping up to be a year of opportunity. Here you're getting the optimist in me. The London conference...
We're going to tape you on this.
All right. The London conference at the end of January raised an extraordinary $12 billion in pledges to help Syrian refugees, with credible amounts dedicated to education and livelihoods. Multi-year pledges were on the rise, and UNHCR has appealed for all of these pledges to be honored as soon as possible. More money is being pledged, but the demands are still greater. Most programs are underfunded, which has a multiplicity of impacts, including on the host population directly and indirectly. The impact on host communities has opened up a new engagement by development actors, and to recognize the granting of asylum for what it is, a global public good. A UNHCR conference at the end of March to solicit commitments for resettlement may have yielded modest results in numerical terms, but it was marked by a broader focus on other legal avenues that states can pursue to provide protection, for example, through family reunification, labor migration schemes, student scholarships, and other forms of humanitarian admission. At its spring session in April, the World Bank raised $1 billion in grants and concessional loan financing to assist states in the Middle East and North Africa help refugees and the host communities. Next week, the World Humanitarian Summit will convene, and we're all looking forward to renewed commitment to the respect for international humanitarian law, so that senseless bombings of hospitals and IDP camps cease once and for all, and that humanitarian access to stranded or embattled populations is guaranteed, as well as new commitments for more and better managed financing of humanitarian assistance. On September 19th, the UN General Assembly will have a summit focused on large-scale movements of refugees and migrants. I've included in the packet the background paper for this meeting, which is very well done. On 20th September, President Obama will convene a summit among countries that have introduced practical measures to promote education and livelihoods, increase multilateral funding, and expand resettlement places. All of this could, in sum, project us to a new period where conflict prevention and resolution, asylum and migration management, humanitarian assistance and development are all more deliberately and conscientiously promoted with a view to providing necessary protection and care to refugees and to finding solutions to their plight. Last year has revealed that no single country can provide solutions, and that, in the absence of collective responsibility sharing, the crisis will deepen. It is revealed that all countries of asylum need the support of their regional neighbors and the international community for asylum. UNHCR has appealed to all states to keep their borders open to people in need of international protection, to provide access to state safety through resettlement and other legal pathways, to protect refugees and asylum seekers from refoulement, for being sent back to unsafe conditions and perhaps death, to offer refugees in the communities where they live economic and educational opportunities and social services, and to increase global financial support through multiple channels. The United States remains UNHCR's most generous donor. It also contributes generously to the ICRC, the International Committee for the Red Cross, the International Organization for Migration, UNRWA, the Palestine Refugee Agency, to non-governmental organizations, and to the World Food Program. We count on you to encourage the United States to sustain bipartisan support for humanitarian assistance for refugees, and to advocate for the United States to take the lead with countries so that international financial institutions, bilateral development agencies, introduce mechanisms to help states at the outset of an emergency to reinforce their national capacities to not only cope with the arrival of refugees, but to transform the diverse capacities of the refugee population for the benefit of the local economy. The U.S. also remains one of the top countries of asylum in the world, and we would encourage also advocacy for the United States to receive and process properly refugees and asylum seekers from Central American countries. It's the single largest country of refugee resettlement. Here, too, we count on your influential voices to promote more public awareness of the benefits of refugee resettlement and to cultivate the spirit of welcome and tolerance that has for decades characterized America's national and international and domestic policies toward refugees. One day there will be political solutions that will allow refugees and displaced persons to return and to rebuild their homes. America's leadership in humanitarian diplomacy remains vital, and your advocacy and influence remains equally important so that the U.S. remains the beacon of hope for refugees that it has always been. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Shelly. Mark?
Yes.